The floorboards in my kitchen had a crack, running from the stove to the refrigerator. I had been meaning to fix it for 3 years. Every morning I made coffee and stepped over it and told myself maybe this weekend. It was never this weekend. That crack was the most honest thing in my life at the time. Everything else had a surface on it, a finish. Something you were supposed to look at instead of what was underneath. My name is Rachel. I am 29 years old. I work in financial auditing. I am good at finding things that do not add up. Numbers do not lie to you the way people do. They just sit there and wait until someone looks closely enough. I grew up in a house where looking closely was considered rude. My parents had 2 children. Me and my brother Daniel. Daniel was 3 years older. Confident in the way that people are confident when they have never been told no. He had our father's jaw and our mother's charm, and he moved through the world like it had been arranged in advance for his convenience. I was the quiet one. The one who read too much and spoke too carefully and never quite fit the shape the family had made for itself. When I was 19, my grandmother passed away. Her name was Margaret. She was my father's mother, and she smelled like lavender and old books. And she was the only person in my family who ever asked me what I was thinking, and then waited for the actual answer. She left a will. I was told the will divided everything equally between my father and his brother. Property, savings, personal belongings. Split down the middle. I was young. I had no reason to question it. I went back to university and I studied and I built a life out of careful choices, and I did not think about the will again for 10 years. Until 3 weeks ago. I was at my desk at 7 in the evening. Everyone else had gone home. I was finishing a routine audit on a property management company. Standard work? Cross-referencing ownership records against financial statements. A name came up in the records. My father's name. That was not unusual by itself. My father owned a small rental property on the east side. I knew about that. But the record I was looking at listed him as co-owner of a commercial building on Hartwell Street, a building that had been generating rental income since 2014. I did not know about that building. I sat very still for a moment. The office was quiet. The screen light was the only thing in the room. I pulled the full ownership record. The building on Hartwell Street had been transferred into my father's name in 2013. The transfer document listed the source as an estate settlement. Margaret's estate. I leaned back in my chair. My grandmother had owned a commercial building. It had passed to my father through her estate. And for 11 years, no one had told me. I closed the file. Reopened it. Read it again. The numbers did not change. I drove home slowly. I made tea I did not drink. I sat at the kitchen table and I thought about everything I knew and everything I had been told and the space between those two things. My grandmother's will had been handled by a lawyer named Gerald Foss. He had retired 4 years ago. I remembered his name because he had sent a card to my parents after the funeral, and my mother had put it on the mantel. The next morning, I called the law firm he had worked for. Gerald Foss was retired, but his files had been transferred to a younger partner, a woman named Joyce Ellerman. I explained who I was. I said I was trying to obtain a copy of my grandmother. Margaret's will and estate settlement documents? I said it was for personal estate research. Joyce Ellerman was quiet for a moment. She said she would need to verify my identity and pull the file. She said it might take a day or two. I said that was fine. It took 4 hours. She called me back at 2 in the afternoon. Her voice was careful, measured, the way voices get when someone is choosing words slowly. "Ms. Rachel," she said, "I have the file in front of me. I want to make sure I understand your query correctly. You are Margaret's granddaughter on the paternal side." "Yes," I said. She paused again. "Are you aware that you are named in this will?" The room felt very still. "No," I said. I was not aware of that. Another pause. "Your grandmother left specific instructions," she said. "A portion of the estate was designated directly to you, not to your father, to you specifically. The document is very clear on this point." My throat tightened. "What portion?" I said. "The commercial property on Hartwell Street," she said, "and a savings account with a balance at time of settlement of $140,000. Both were designated to you in full. I put my hand flat on the desk in front of me. Was I ever contacted? I said. She hesitated. The file shows a notification was sent to your father's address on your behalf. You were 19 at the time, still listed as a dependent at that address. My father's address. The notification went to my father, who was also the executor of the estate. I see, I said. Ms. Rachel, she said quietly. I want to be straightforward with you. What I am reading in this file suggests the estate was not settled in accordance with the will's specific instructions. That is a serious matter. If you want to pursue this formally, I can refer you to an estate litigation specialist. Yes, I said. Please do that. I hung up. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes. Not crying. Just sitting. Processing the way you process. Something that reorders everything you thought you understood about your own life. 11 years. The building on Hartwell Street had been generating income for 11 years. My father had been collecting that income every month, while I audited other people's finances and stepped over a crack in my kitchen floor and told myself, maybe this weekend. I drove to my parents' house that evening. My mother opened the door. She smiled when she saw me. Daniel's car was in the driveway. They were having dinner. Of course they were. Come in, my mother said. We were just eating. I came in. I sat at the table. Daniel looked up from his plate. My father set down his fork. Something in my face must have been different, because my mother stopped moving and looked at me carefully. I called grandmother's lawyer today, I said. The table went very quiet. I found out about Hartwell Street, I said, and the savings account, and what the will actually said. My father's jaw tightened. Rachel, he said. That was a long time ago. 11 years. I said, yes. It was complicated, he said. The estate was complicated. There were debts. There were costs. It had to be restructured. I looked at him. Her will named me specifically, I said. Not the estate. Not the family, me, by name. Daniel put down his fork. You're going to make this into something, he said. You always do this. I looked at him. What do I always do? I said. Make everything about you, he said. It was a family decision. We needed the income from that property to cover things after she died. You were in university. You weren't contributing anything. I wasn't contributing anything, I said. He shrugged. I looked at my father. I have spoken to an estate litigation attorney, I said. I have the original will. I have the settlement documents. I have 11 years of rental income records from Hartwell Street. I want what was left to me. My mother made a sound. You would take your own father to court, she said. He took from me for 11 years, I said. He just did it quietly so it didn't feel like taking. My father stood up. You walk out that door and pursue this, he said. You are no longer welcome in this house. I picked up my bag. I know, I said. I walked out. The litigation took 8 months. Estate attorneys. Court filings. 11 years of rental income calculated at current market rates. My father hired a lawyer who argued the will had been misread, that the property designation was ambiguous, that the savings account had been absorbed into general estate costs legitimately. Joyce Ellerman testified. She had pulled every document. The will was not ambiguous. My grandmother had written my name in her own handwriting, in the margin next to the property clause, a secondary notation the executor was legally required to honor. My father's lawyer tried to argue the notation was informal, not legally binding. The judge disagreed. The ruling came on a Thursday morning. I was sitting in a conference room with my attorney when she got the call. She looked at me across the table and nodded once. Full settlement. The property transferred to my name. 11 years of rental income calculated and awarded with interest. The savings account balance adjusted for inflation. The total was just over $600,000. I did not celebrate. I drove home. I made tea. I sat at the kitchen table. I looked at the crack in the floor running from the stove to the refrigerator. I called a contractor the next morning. He came on Friday, fixed it in 40 minutes, charged me $80. I paid him and thanked him and stood in my kitchen and looked at the floor. Smooth, clean, no gap. My father has not called since the ruling. My mother called once. She said I had broken the family. I told her the family had been broken for 11 years. We just hadn't looked at the floor closely enough to see it. Daniel sent a message 3 weeks after the ruling. 2 words. Are you happy? I thought about it for a long time before I replied. I typed back 1 word. Yes. And I meant it. Not because of the money. Not because I won. But because I had spent 29 years being the quiet one. The one who did not cause trouble. The one who stepped over things and told herself maybe later. My grandmother saw me. She put my name in a will in her own handwriting. She left me something that was mine. I just had to be willing to go get it. The building on Hartwell Street has 4 tenants. A bakery on the ground floor. An accountancy firm on the 2nd. A small design studio on the 3rd. And 1 vacant unit on the top floor that I am converting into my own office. I sit up there sometimes. In the evenings when the light comes. Through the west window, and I think about her. About lavender and old books. About someone asking what you are thinking and waiting for the actual answer. I found it, grandmother. I tell her. I finally looked closely enough.